And it is a good morning. It's a cold morning. Winter is coming. I needed to say that.
Had to get it out.
I just had to get it out of my system. Come on,
That's
admit
fair.
it. A lot of you people want to say that whenever things are cold now. So
Yes.
just saying. We have got a show. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Chris over the holiday break. I filled in for Matt a little bit last week. Y'all have been a wonderful, and I mean wonderful audience, and I appreciate you engaging on the Super Talk text line and calling in 615-737-9986. That's 615-737-9986. Cool show today. I really wanted to bring in my oldest son, Cam, who we call the Beast, he's 14, and wanted to talk a little bit about what teenagers are up against. Talk about the realities that they're facing. It's a family Friday. I think it's important that when we talk about the America we want, the Tennessee we want, the communities that we want, that we pay attention to the next generation, because the truth is, for most of us adults, we've already made up our minds. We've already formed our opinions. We decided what we believe, what we don't believe. The next generation is what's in play. That's who you want. You don't want a woke culture. I can't even say that word. It's weird. You have to engage the next generation. So I'm going to do that with my oldest son. We're going to have that conversation in the second hour. The first hour, we're going to get through some of the various news topics and things that are popping right now. What's happening in Maine, some of the different lawsuits. We got the Department of Justice suing Texas over immigration. Lauren Boebert's decided to switch districts, to move to a district where she doesn't live, to run for Congress because she's running away from a fight. Prime Video ads. We have to talk about this. You're going to get ads, those of you that watch Prime, and you got to fork over $2.99 a month extra if you don't want ads. I feel like this is only going in one direction with television and video on demand and all that stuff. It's just up. Want to give a shout out to my people in Nolensville. Love you guys. Fantastic community. That's where my crew lives. The Nolensville Panthers, youth football. We switched leagues, Mac.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah. We're now
Moving up or moving over?
So
What is this?
moving over.
Okay, moving over.
We're going to be playing Mount Juliet now.
Ooh, all right.
The one that we lost a couple years ago, the Brentwood Blaze, which was what I played as a kid.
Oh, wow.
Moved out of the league that we were in to another league, to this other league. And now we're going to get the Blaze again. And
Let's go.
We are excited in
Yeah.
Nolensville. That's the team. That's next door. That's the rivalry that, so many of our players, they go to school with some of these kids. And they're like,
Of course.
hey, we want to play you. Like, we want to see
I remember that.
We
Yeah.
want to see
Oh, we want you.
Right.
Yeah.
We want to see who's better. Mount Juliet has a fantastic program out there. Get to play them again. Got a Smyrna Bulldogs. There's a lot of teams.
Oh, man, this is going to be good. Okay, great.
The Nolensville Panthers, much like winter, are coming. And so I want you guys to know that we are excited about seeing some folks that we've played before, seeing some new folks. I'm ready to rock and roll. I love youth football. It is
so much fun.
It is. I've coached youth football from age, I guess, 6 and 7 year olds all the way up to 12 and 13 year olds. And every part of it I enjoy. There's not, I got the young guys are like bumper cars. You can't run a play. It's hilarious. It's a little frustrating at times, but just to watch them progress.
Yeah.
And they're
oh my gosh.
Kids now that I've coached for years. And like I know them, I know their families, and to just see that development, to see that growth, them growing into young men, the resilience, the character, the disappointment of, well, I thought I was this, but now you're making me play this.
Yeah, that's a whole thing.
It's like, because I want to be Tom Brady. Everybody wants to be Tom Brady.
Yep.
And now it's Patrick Mahomes. Now, or Jalen Hurts. Everybody's like, I want to be the quarterback. And, folks watching that sort of like, well, maybe I can be a linebacker. Maybe I can do this.
Yeah.
And to see that growth, I mean, so much fun.
Love that. No, you get me excited for when Hannah and I are going to have kids, and I'm going to get to do that. I'm so pumped for that.
It is one of the more so it is worth what I call the larval human time, where it's like they just look at you and poop, and you're like, oh, okay, this gets better, right?
Please,
like, no dad actually, like, if they're honest, there are very few dads that are like, ooh, this little doughy human thing, it's just fantastic.
This is exciting.
I mean, you can be like, I love my boy,
yeah,
or I love my girl, but like, you're like, okay. So I had to learn, no joke, I treated diapers like NASCAR pit stops.
Oh, I love it. Like a little competition.
Like, can I get them clean, quick? Like, so I was competing with myself
as
an engagement point, because otherwise, now my oldest, who will join us next hour, Cam, was a great baby. Just, he was chill, hung out, did his
nice,
thing.
Quiet, yeah.
His younger brother, Kettner, who we call the middle beast, I also called Baby Dragon. That when I would hold him, he would scream like he was being scolded.
Oh, wow.
And then Mama Bear would show up and hold him, and all was right in the world.
And it would just be
right. And I'm like,
yes.
yeah. I'm like, this is not fair.
You're like, wait, what?
I didn't scold you. But that was what I had to deal with, and we've since survived. We've survived 3 bio kids, and we have other brothers join us pretty regularly these days. So it's a wild crew, but man, I love Nolensville. It's a great place to be. And this, frankly, this Middle Tennessee area, this listening audience area, it's fun, man. I mean,
fantastic.
We are privileged to live in an amazing place without income taxes. I mean, the income tax is a nice bonus to not have that, but to just have the sense of community that's here, the engagement, it's so cool, because it's not in LA or New York, but I mean, come on, folks, you're looking at New York. Is anybody like, you know what? That looks great.
I want that.
It's going great. No one's saying that. And so we're in a cool place where we see growth. There's a lot of options. There's a lot of cool things to do, art, music, all that, but still that sense of community. And to live 30 minutes from Nashville in a place it's a small community where we still have the Buttercup Festival. I mean,
oh my gosh. Yeah. Best of both worlds kind of thing. Yeah.
I kind of love it. And so I'm really excited there. Again, no one knows what day it is. We established this yesterday. For those of you who are in the confusing time between Christmas and New Year's, today is Friday. It is approximately 9:15, and you're going to be okay.
You've almost made it. It's okay.
Your kid, the break, now we're building up to Christmas, the break with the kids at home, that was probably okay-ish.
It's fun.
And now we're in they're still here, aren't they?
Oh, gosh.
I hear the thunder. They're running around. And it's not a bad thing. It's great to be able to do things with family, but I understand a lot of you parents out there are like, okay, go play outside. It's freezing. No, go play outside.
No, please.
Put on a jacket. Well, it's still cold. Put on 5 jackets. Just leave. And I respect that. So, hold strong. You can do it. I want to give you guys, again, I do this before each show to let you know kind of where I'm coming from. I think anytime you have the responsibility of giving your opinion or speaking to a large public audience, you need to let them know where you're coming from. So I like folks to know what I do, because y'all hear me Wednesdays with Matt, joining the show there, and I fill in periodically for everybody else on the station. But my day job is working over in Franklin with Thanks, which is a fantastic company that does small gestures of appreciation to help businesses essentially grow their relationships with gratitude, to learn how do we, it's the cup of coffee. It is the ride when somebody needs it in the rain that helps build relationships. I'm learning a lot about that right now, but that's kind of day job. It's there on Franklin Square, right above Ruby Sunshine. Great people over there. I'm also on the editorial board of the Tennessean. I'm a columnist there. Yes, I'm in, conservative island. I'm explaining conservative things to an audience that's, much more diverse than probably this audience, who's very conservative. I write for AL.com, and as you can hear by the sound of my voice, I do work with Cumulus. And so I want you guys to know the stack. I'm also a partner in a media company where we're making movies and content because I think that's how you shape the future. So I have a full stack, full deck of things that I'm doing, but I never want anybody to say, well, he didn't let us know, because I've had a lot of different voices that I've listened to, and then I find out, oh, well, they're working with so-and-so. That explains that, and then you lose credibility. So I want to be upfront with who I work with and what I do, just so you guys know, just so you have a frame of reference. My background is in politics. I'm a lawyer by trade. Again, you guys pointed this out yesterday. I may have some ADD, and that when I figure things out, I kind of move on to other things. My wife jokes that I like to collect jobs. I worked in the House, in Senate in Washington, worked with different think tanks, worked on a wide range of public policies. I'm a policy nerd and wonk, and I love it. So that we've got all that out of the way. I want to sort of set up the conversation on. I remember my aunt liking to listen to, she loved to listen to Milli Vanilli, and there was a song, Blame It on the Rain. Well, today, it is Blame It on the Maine. Like, I don't know what we're doing, but I need Democrats to stop saving us and saving democracy, because the way that they keep doing it is just really tyrannical. And that concerns me, because it's the I declare, and I want to set this up, before we hit the break. This is Maine Secretary of State Shenna Bellows, and she's a Democrat, right? Like, you can see her picture with Joe Biden, with Barack Obama, like, okay, Democrat. Here's what she said. Quote, I conclude that Mr. Trump's primary petition is invalid. Specifically, I find that the declaration on his candidate consent form is false, because he is not qualified to hold the office of the president under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. This is the whole insurrection thingy. Sweet. I declare, just since we're doing this, these are the new rules. I declare that because Joe Biden has not been able to control the border and secure our country, that he has allowed an insurrection to take place and therefore must be removed from all ballots pursuant to Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Is that how we do this? I
think you're catching on.
I think these are the rules. You know what this all reminds me of? Michael Scott in Bankruptcy.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So if some of y'all are fans of The Office, and
love it.
When Michael Scott was in a little bit of financial trouble, he said he was going to have to declare bankruptcy. So he literally said, I declare bankruptcy. That's not how you do that. But that's that's what the Maine Secretary of State is doing. Is I declare because of reasons. Science, climate change. # unity. I mean, that's what we're up against. We'll take this on a little bit more. We'll talk about the Boebert switching the districts and what that means. I'm Cameron Smith. You're listening to the Chris Hand Show on Super Talk 99.7. All I know about this song is it's something about horses and women, which, I mean, horses are pretty cool, and so are women.
I'm in.
Yeah, count me in. I mean, that's a pretty good time right there. I'm just saying. So, the great Matt Murphy always loves to troll me a little bit when I'm on air, and I respect that. Trolling is an art form. And here's what he told me via text. The Golden Bear's going to give them Panther pups a whooping.
Wow.
And other smack talk. Oh, I like some smack talk. We've joined the TYSA in Nolensville. But let me tell you a little story about those Bears. Before the Bears left the TNYFL for the TYSA, we were in the playoffs, and the Mount Juliet Bears were, and I guess this was like maybe 10U. The Mount Juliet Bears were legit. They had a defensive end. I still remember his number. It was number 10.
Wow.
He's probably, I don't know, 12, 14 now, probably playing in the NFL. I mean, this kid was legit. I mean, he came screaming off the end, and nobody could do anything.
J.J. Watt type bloodline.
It was brutal. And we had no chance, right? We were outmatched.
Yeah.
The Mount Juliet Bears were the truth. And we had practiced it the week before because we were like, these guys are good.
Yeah.
And we ran the swinging gate, which is where you take your whole offensive line other than the center and the quarterback and shift it.
Wow.
To the side. It is a weird-looking formation, and nobody knows what to do.
Yep.
So we did it.
Confuse them.
We confused them, and we scored, and we won. And we beat a team we had no business beating.
Let's go.
We had a good defense. They couldn't. They had a great defense, and it's just because we confused them with a totally oddball offense. So
some good coaching.
There you go, Matt Murphy. I understand out there in Mount Juliet, they want a little revenge. And I respect that. Like, I am here for that. I mean, here's who we're playing. Because I want to give shout out to, we're the new guys in the league. We're coming in. Who we've got? We got the Brentwood Blaze, Clarksville Screaming Eagles.
Screaming.
Donaldson Hermitage Warriors, Gallatin Green Wave, the Goodlettsville Trojans, Hendersonville Titans.
Nice.
Lebanon Blue Devils, Mount Juliet Bears, Murfreesboro Junior Patriots, the Rising Stars of Siegel, Shelby Park Jaguars, Smyrna Bulldogs, and the White House Warriors. So
2 Warriors in the league?
Hey, look, they're in the end, I've seen Highlander. In the end, there can only be one.
Yes, exactly.
I know how this works.
Exactly.
And I think we've played the Hendersonville Titans maybe in a jamboree.
Okay.
We've played the Brentwood Blaze. So Mount Juliet, obviously. So we're used to some of these teams, but
some new faces for sure.
Faces.
This will be fun. That'll be fun.
I mean, and look, there's teams we miss. I truthfully, if I'm honest, I think one of the best programs for youth football out there is the Blackman Blaze. I mean, they are fantastic. I mean, they run an excellent program out there, and there's several others in the league that we were in. The football board for us made the decision to switch over, and I'm cool with it because, man, fresh faces. And,
yeah.
Man, the Brentwood Blaze are there.
Come on.
Oh, yeah. So, thank you, Matt, for your smack talk. I very much appreciate that. Back to blaming it on the Maine. Okay, here's the deal. If a Secretary of State can just say, well, I declare that Donald Trump is an insurrectionist and therefore not qualified, and he said he was qualified, but he's not, so he can't be on the ballot. Are you kidding me? Just stop it. This stuff's ridiculous. I don't care. Hashtag democracy dies in darkness, all the other stuff. We're literally having trials right now that are ongoing about whether or not, what happened with January 6th. What are the things that are real? What are not? I love it. I understand that some folks, including the former president, say, well, all of this stuff is just political prosecution. Well, here's what I do know, is that getting your day in court versus being crucified by the media really matters. And Joan Jones had a January 6th person on the air yesterday, I believe, about a lawsuit against them where they prevailed. And again, I understand that it's awful and atrocious. As somebody who's been sued for telling the truth, I know that how awful litigation can be. But getting your day in court and saying, well, let's talk about the facts. Let's talk about what really happened is quite important. And so if all that's required is a politician deciding that you're guilty of insurrection, and I understand this is an anomaly. This is a crazy situation. What happened on January 6th was awful and stupid. But Donald Trump has not been adjudicated in any court to be an insurrectionist. And again, this is coming from me. I'm not a Trump acolyte. I'm not going to defend all of Trump's stuff because he does a lot of stupid stuff. But the idea that he can't be on the ballot, I mean, you need to have a little bit more basis than we feel that this application is there. And I've listened to people try to defend the Colorado Supreme Court, try to defend this action in Maine, and say, well, you know, it doesn't have to be an adjudication. Well, the prior context was this Civil War. It was pretty obvious who was on what side of what. This was not something that we didn't understand or couldn't figure out. You know, the idea that Donald Trump, well, he was silent for X amount of time while people were attacking the Capitol and breaking stuff. Well, he said some stuff. Yeah, okay. Again, this shouldn't be a matter of my opinion versus the Maine Secretary of State's opinion. Let's have it out in court. The criminal charges versus Donald Trump in various jurisdictions, let's do it. I don't like this idea that either everything is the way one side sees it or everything's the way the other side sees it. Let's have it out. Let's have it out on a factual basis, not in this sort of media circus land. And I think that's what Secretary of State Bellows is missing, is that essentially she's reached a legal conclusion about Trump's conduct that permits her to unilaterally do a thing. And I don't know that they fully appreciate, that she fully appreciates the abject or the absolute threat to democracy that she represents if she does this type of thing. Because, and this, you might recall Abraham Lincoln, a government of the people, by the people, for the people. We don't want that to vanish from the earth. Y'all remember that? Remember that thing? If we decide that the people can't decide and that we need elites in a far off place to decide, we have a massive problem. And the fact that Democrats seem to increasingly be of the view that us plebes can't make decisions, so they have to foreclose them, is a huge problem. And now, frankly, there's some Democrats that have come out against this. One of the main congressmen popped right out and said, whoa, I voted to impeach Donald Trump, but he should definitely be on the ballot. And so it's not the case that, like, no Democrats see this. This is a fringy, weird view that we must remove the choice from the voters. And it's something that we should absolutely reject. We need to take a break to pay for radio. I'm Cameron Smith. You're listening to The Chris Hand Show on SuperTalk 99.7.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. One of the things you hear me talk about frequently on my radio show that has been going for over 20 years in the Nashville market is that annuity sales are not necessarily a great thing for the end investor. Now, if you go to an investment firm, a lot of times you'll get that. The first thing that they recommend, an annuity. Banks and investment firms recommend these for one really good reason. And many times that reason isn't the best thing for you. It's commissions. It's a huge moneymaker for the investing industry. This is why I think it's so important that when you work with an investment advisor, that they not be paid on commission. It creates a huge conflict because it creates an incentive to sell you things that may not be in your best interest. If you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call. We don't do anything on commissions. Or you can call 615-851-1950.
Well, we're on to the next episode, the final episode of me filling in this week for Chris. Really appreciate Chris trusting me with his show. So far, I've behaved myself quite well. As much as I enjoy stirring the pot and, poking at people, I've been really, really well behaved. Those of you who hear me on Matt's show know I like to mix it up. But I've been nice. I've been good. I cannot emphasize strongly enough how much I oppose the well-intended elite, because they don't care about freedom and liberty. And it's not, and I wish it were all the Republicans or all the Democrats or this and that. No, it's complicated. There's a lot, but the attitude of I know best and therefore I have to remove your options is something that if you can hear the sound of my voice, you should reject. I want to be real clear about what that means. If you see the Republican Party, for example, saying, well, we don't trust that these Republicans are real Republicans, so they can't be on the primary ballot because voters might be confused. Same thing. Same exact thing. They're saying, you're too stupid to know whether somebody is a good candidate or not, therefore we have to take away your options. And I know that party brass means well, but it's the problem all the time. It's the well-intended elite. It's, well, we're protecting you from your own choices. The Maine Secretary of State, we're protecting you from a candidate that I don't like. And so I don't care whether it's the state Republican Party. I don't care whether it's a politician in Maine or judges in Colorado. Anybody that's telling you I'm taking away your options for your own good does not understand liberty. They think you're too stupid to figure it out. And I don't think you are. I think, and this is, again, my position's probably a little extreme here, but I love the states where you can basically raise your hand and say, I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat. There is no partisan gatekeeper. You don't have to go through the state party brass. You just declare and say, I'm this or that. And let's be honest, with the range of candidates in the current Republican Party, the word Republican doesn't mean a whole lot. Like if I say, well, so-and-so is a Republican. Well, what does that mean? Well, they're generally pro-life. Well, maybe. They're generally fiscally conservative. Well, maybe. They generally want to uphold the rule of law, sort of sometimes. So the word Republican doesn't mean a whole lot. And so for somebody to declare that they're a Republican is fine by me. And then it's on voters to know, is that a Republican that I want to back? Or is that a Republican that just doesn't really fit the bill? That, to me, is the best way to do it. Same with Democrats. You can declare you're a Democrat. If you happen to be a dyed-in-the-wool conservative who declares as a Democrat because it's a blue state and Republicans don't have a shot, okay, cool. And then the voters get to decide whether they like you or not. Why? Because voters should decide. And so this is going to keep happening because there are so many people that think they're righteous right now. The Bible's clear about that. There's no one righteous, not even one. But the idea, there is a mindset that's pervasive in politics because we've muted and deleted all the other voices that we don't like to hear from. We've taken our ball and gone home, and we've decided that our views are the ones that should prevail all the time. And that's just not true. It's not reality. It's a dystopia based in the internet. And what's happening is those people who are stuck in that weird dystopian land now fancy themselves superheroes. The Maine Secretary of State fancies herself a superhero. She is defending democracy itself by removing an insurrectionist from the ballot. That's what she actually thinks. That's what she believes. Now, is she? Of course not. But that's the mindset. And so we see this all the time of I am a hero. I am the one. When really that's just not the case. I don't want to beat a dead horse here. This is dumb. I think the Supreme Court steps in and the Supreme Court says no. Like, that's not how the 14th Amendment should be applied. And they, I hope, will provide future guidance of saying, well, this is what we need to see. We either need to see a prosecution under these laws that's successful and somebody's convicted of something, or a congressional determination or something to make this clear so we don't have states, and certainly not individual politicians deciding that candidates can't be on the ballot because they have feelings. We need to get over that. I want to talk briefly. This is just cracked me up the other day. I saw it wasn't a meme, but it was something that somebody put up, and they showed the price of all the video streaming services, and then they showed the prior price of cable news. And they're like, congratulations, we rebuilt it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's the same now.
It's the same. I saw this because they launched it in, I guess, the UK and some other countries. Prime Video ads are coming, I think, in January to the U.S., or you can pay $3 more a month. I think I pay like $100 and something for the Prime membership.
Jeez.
And they're like, you can pay $3 more to not have ads on the streaming stuff. And obviously everybody knows about the Netflix pricing. You know, we shifted this and that, and you've got Disney Plus, and I don't know. I mean, there's a million of them now, and they're all these little like add-ons and things.
Yep.
And by the time you add them back together, then you're way more expensive than cable. Like that's what drives me insane.
And more inconvenient. I mean, you're going different app. Oh, watch this over here.
It's everywhere. We took something that we were like, oh, well, this will be a la carte. Well, the problem is it never got to actually be just you pick the shows you like.
Nope.
It was you pick the streaming service. Well, now you have to add all of them to watch. So, well, I got to watch. What's the soccer one?
Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso.
Got to have Apple TV.
Right. That's on Apple TV. So you want to go see that. You got to go there. You want specific shows. You still have to sign up for all the stuff you don't want. I love capitalism and will defend it to my last breath. But sometimes it is also super stupid. And we'll have my friend Martin Schroet from Smart Bank on at some point in the future. He got tied up today. He couldn't make it. But just to get a general thought on the economic climate, what we're up against, because I don't know if you guys have been paying attention, but one of the things that we're talking about, economic realities, have y'all been seeing some of the fire sale real estate prices, like for office buildings and things like that? I've been looking at different markets, and we're talking like, multi-million dollar, $100 million properties at 40% of value. Like, they're getting sold because nobody's in the office spaces. Everybody's doing remote work. D.C. is getting crushed right now because the federal government's probably not going to go back to full-time sit-in-the-office type work. And so commercial real estate in a lot of different markets is getting lit up. And so I'm interested to see what's the domino effect. Like, obviously, that means that folks that invested in those properties are taking huge losses. It means that somewhere somebody's feeling the pain. And what is that? What are the economic ramifications of that? And I want to think through that. And, we joke about rebuilding cable news dollar for dollar, but all this stuff adds up. I mean, when you look at the pricing on some of this stuff, if you look at a cup of coffee, it's $6.
Yeah.
I understand why people are struggling right now. I understand why, they're like, well, inflation's coming down. Well, inflation's still really high. And you do know how inflation works, right? Like, we inflate to just say we have inflation, but it's lower, doesn't do anything about the prior increases. And that's been Joe Biden's argument all along. We have inflation under control.
It's working.
It's working. And he does his, it's working. Well, no, it's not, man. And I want to be honest here, because I think that we, in politics and political conversations, exaggerate a lot. The impact of the president is one variable. The idea that all the things that happened under the prior president is their fault and all the things, well, okay, by that rationale, like everything that Anthony Fauci did is Donald Trump's fault. Well, but you don't think that. I mean, all the reckless spending under Donald Trump is Donald Trump's fault. Well, no, but Congress. Well, it's the same thing with Joe Biden, right? Like, there's responsibility and leadership to go around, and the idea that the president gets blamed for everything and gets credit for everything, we should get away from this, right? Because we start this blame game, and then it's like, well, it has to be better, so we just got to get rid of this guy. Okay, fine, but like Joe Biden, he doesn't have much of a plan on like any front. He's not a very good president. I'm not defending him, but the idea that he can here's a perfect example. We have profligate COVID spending, and then Joe Biden stands there and said, record deficit reduction. He's like, I am excellent. I am the most fiscally conservative president in history. No, you're not. It's because we spent like we were drunk, and we can't even figure out how to spend that much money again. So you're not actually our fiscal savior. You're not taking us to pre-COVID spending levels. You're just claiming a win because we are not mailing checks anymore. And that's the kind of garbage about, what presidents do that drives me nuts, because they're just not as influential as we want them to be. There's no magic wand.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot lately. How much power does, and I'm really asking, like, how much power does the president really have over things that we are such hot button topics, like gas prices, for instance?
Yeah, well, this is the whole, we have the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and we release this. That's a blip on the radar. Now, the president does have impact on permitting, right? Mm-hmm. And where can you pull it out of the ground? The president doesn't have impact over saying you must pull it out of the ground. So there's a lot of variables here that make it complicated that people don't want to talk about, because it's much easier just to be like, the one I like is fantastic and save the world, and the one I don't like is the worst.
Yeah.
But Joe Biden's fatal flaw in all of this is he just doesn't seem to understand that drunken spending impacts inflation. Like, it absolutely does. If you're flushing money out the door, and his plan has pretty much uniformly been just keep spending more. And that, to me, I don't know how to explain this stuff, because it's economics and it's nerdy and dorky. But like, if you want to pull inflation down, you have to do what the Fed's doing, which means you raise interest rates, right? You make it cheap. You make it more expensive to borrow, so people don't borrow. So you don't dump borrowed money into the economy on top of the borrowed money that Congress is dumping into the economy. I mean, it's dorky stuff, but it's really important. And I think when we just say a president is responsible for everything, we're not being serious. And that doesn't mean Joe Biden's a good president.
No.
It just means that there's no magic wand that presidents wave, because you can go back historically and look under Republican presidents and Democratic presidents, and Democrats will hail, well, the economy was wonderful under this president, Bill Clinton, for example, and say the economy was great under Bill Clinton. Well, Bill Clinton didn't do that by himself. There were tax reforms and other things that involved Republicans that mattered, right? And so this is what we commonly do, is Democrats will say, well, our policies produced the most economic growth because things that happened while these guys were in power mean do what we want. Republicans kind of do the same. We need to kind of just acknowledge the reality that there's a lag. And that actually nobody's fiscally conservative. Actually, a lot of people contributed to inflation. And if we want to get it back, we got to go to pre-COVID spending levels. We got to do some things that are uncomfortable. Republicans are sort of like, yeah, that sounds nice, but they don't have the political stomach for it. Democrats are like, what are you talking about? Let's go spend. Let's go. And those are the differences that we need to talk about and that we need to be serious about, because if you're fine with groceries being as expensive as they are, if you're fine with not being able to afford a house, like, you look at the average mortgages and you're like, they have doubled under the Biden administration. Now, do I think that's all Biden's fault? No. I mean, the Fed raising interest rates are the reason why that happened. Biden didn't tell them to do that. But, man, when you combine all of it, he has not had a game. This is my biggest gripe against Joe Biden. He has not had a plan to deal with anything. Not Ukraine, not Israel, not inflation, not immigration. It's, we're here. It's working. I mean,
It's working.
No, it's not.
Come on, man.
It's not. It's not working. And you don't have a plan. And then he sends out Karine Jean-Pierre to explain to us how we're just kind of dumb and we don't see it.
With word salad.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to answer that question about the thing that you asked, but I'll tell you it's working. Everything's fine. Well, it's not. It's kind of a dumpster fire. We got to take a break.
Freedom.
Freedom. Eagles, America. If I had a press secretary, that's what I would send him out. Tell like Patriot stories.
Exactly.
I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Chris Hand Show, and you're listening to Super Talk 99.7. Is this Limp Bizkit?
I'd honestly have to look it up.
No, that's fine. I feel like I did it all for the nookie or something. Something like that. I'm Cameron Smith. You can find me over at D as in David, D Cameron Smith on X. Also Threads. Still not sure how to use that one. But I love having the conversation. Whenever you see me out and about, grab me, say hi. I kind of run the Middle Tennessee circuit, hang out in Franklin a lot, Nolensville, Nashville, and various other communities during youth football season. Appreciate all you guys on the Super Talk text line welcoming the Nolensville Panthers to the new league and telling me about those big kids that grow up in Clarksville.
We had a super texter. It's Pod, Youth of the Nation.
Youth of the Nation. Oh, well.
That's fitting.
Here it is. Here in the next hour, we'll have my 14-year-old son, Cam, also known as the Beast, to discuss what it's like to be a teenager right now. What's going on? Because I want you guys to hear from him because I think it can be helpful. He's absolutely great at communicating with me and kind of letting me know what's going on, what's on his mind, what bothers him. And I think we can all benefit from that discussion. If you have things that's like, hey, I want to ask a teenager this, but talking to my teenager is like, good. Feel free because we have a teenager to experiment on in the next hour. So he's looking at me and very excited about that. I can tell. We on the economy and some of the comments that you guys have made on the Super Talk text line, that's 615-739-9986, 615-737-9986. My apologies. 615-737-9986. The Smyrna Bulldogs are good, Cameron.
Ooh. 1385 telling you to watch out.
I like it. I like it a lot. And then everybody recognized that song. So I'm really...
I know I feel lame. Both of us are lame.
I am so old. But I'll tell you what. Play Rage Against the Machine, Bulls on Parade. I know what that one is. There's a whole list that was my football playlist. And if you play any of those songs at any time, even like one bar, I'm like, yep, I know what that is. So, POD, not pod. It's POD, Mac. I mean, come on. But the things that we hit, come on, Maine Secretary of State and what's going on there, no, that's not going to happen. Trump's going to be on the ballot. I'd be shocked if he's not. What's going on with the economy, where we are right now, I think this is the anchor around the neck of Joe Biden politically. I think this is what does him in. He will not be able to survive. And I had one of my friends reach out after hearing the show the other day and say, well, let me clarify. We'll keep this between us. What do you think is going to happen? And I said, I've been very clear and open, and it's not a secret that Joe Biden loses to everybody but a Trump convicted on a felony charge by a jury of his peers. Forget who's on the other side. Joe Biden, his unfavorables are that bad. And the lack of a plan, the lack of any coherent vision for what's next it kills him, right? The economy is not what people want. They can feel it. They can point to direct things that cost them money. And they don't like that. And so the first person they're going to blame is the current president of the United States, which is Joe Biden. And then the numbers on basically the perception of his mental acuity and resilience and physical condition are also really bad. So they don't trust that he has the capacity, the fortitude to deal with the problems. And to be blunt, we haven't seen that. You really have to stretch to be like, it's going great. Everybody likes the way Joe's handling Ukraine. Everyone likes the way the president's handling Israel, the border. That withdrawal from Afghanistan was just a humdinger. No, nobody's saying any of that. In fact, we have questions like, what's the plan? Even on things that Biden loves that we might sort of raise questions about, like climate change. What's the climate change plan? What are the policies that on your priorities you want to see and explain it to us? He just doesn't do that. That's the mark of a failed leader. And that's where we are right now, is we've got a failed leader who's not going to win. The only way he wins is if Trump's the nominee and Trump's convicted by a jury of his peers. That's it. Otherwise, he loses to everybody. That's going to happen. Come back for the next hour. It's going to be awesome. Conversation with a teenager. I'm Cameron Smith, and you're listening to The Chris Hand Show on Super Talk 99.7.
From ABC News, I'm Derek Dennis. Vowing to fight former President Trump, blasting a decision in Maine to remove his name from the 2024 presidential ballot, citing the 14th Amendment and Trump's role in the January 6th insurrection.
In a 34-page written ruling, Maine's Secretary of State says she knows no one who served in her post has ever taken a presidential candidate off the ballot. But Shenna Bellows says no presidential candidate has ever before engaged in insurrection. Bellows, a Democrat chosen by state lawmakers, says Donald Trump was aware of the likelihood for violence on January 6th, at least initially supported it, and took no timely action to stop it. Trump's campaign says it will quickly seek relief in state court to block Bellows' decision.
ABC's Stephen Portnoy. Busy day at the nation's airports. 2.6 million expected to go through TSA checkpoints alone today, and not all are holiday travelers.
It's my Grammy's birthday.
Is it really?
And I like spending time with all of my family.
But on the West Coast, it is getting clobbered by a massive storm. 30-foot waves hitting California's shoreline, including a rogue wave in Ventura County that sent 8 people to the hospital. Good news to ring in the new year. Nearly 10 million workers in 22 states are getting more money in their paychecks as those states boost minimum wages. More than half of those workers are in California, Hawaii, and New York. And speaking of New Year's, preparations underway, including tight security for the big Times Square ball drop in New York City.
Thousands of New York City police officers are getting ready to deploy for New Year's Eve. While there are no specific threats, the celebration comes during what the FBI and NYPD call a heightened threat environment caused by the war between Israel and Hamas. Demonstrators tried to disrupt other iconic holiday events in the city, the Thanksgiving parade and the tree lighting, and authorities are concerned they'll try again on New Year's Eve.
ABC's Aaron Katursky. A recall on nearly 5 million portable BlendJet 2 blenders. They can overheat and start a fire. You're listening to ABC News.
welcome back to the second hour of the Chris Hand Show. I've got a treat for you guys. I've got my 14-year-old son, Cam, in here, and we're going to poke and prod and see what's under the hood and learn about what's facing teenagers right now. He and I have had the opportunity to talk and just kind of chew through a little bit of it. And I think it's going to be informative and useful and helpful to you guys. Jamal's on the line, and so I want to open with Jamal's. He's been very patient and waiting, and I want to hear what Jamal has to say about parenting. Jamal, can you hear me?
I can hear you, and I appreciate you taking the time to hear me.
Sure, shoot.
I was listening to you a couple days ago when you had your 9-year-old son.
Yep.
And I have to give him props because he was, it was refreshing hearing him.
Yeah.
And how he expressed himself at that particular age, what he went through, and how he managed himself through life and what he has to go through at this stage of life. But more importantly, what was even highlighted there was parenting, and we are going through a lot right now. And I think we fail to, we forget that it all stems from the nucleus, from the family.
Yeah.
And if we want to, create a better society, we have to tackle it from that particular stage, from the family stage.
Absolutely.
And when I heard your son, how you structure your family, it speaks volume for not only how you as a father. I was like, damn, go dad, but you, I'm sure I can say the same for your wife. So, your the way how you structure your family is very exemplary. And I don't know if it's a program that you have that you follow. But
I'm laughing because my boys talk about it as the program. Like we joke about it and we call it the program.
That's wild, but it's some people, they wing it, and I don't feel as though you did that. It seems very structured, and I think we need to have that more in family settings. So I'm very excited to hear what your 14-year-old has to say, with a more developed mind and being more aware of how things are. He's able to analyze things a little bit more. Yeah, man, I think raising a family is very difficult, given what you have to go through, the thing, you can only do so much on your end, but then as you were referencing, when they go out there, they're battled with a barrage of different things from different families that may have a different system from what you have, and you have to prepare them for that, right?
Yeah.
And what do they take on, and what do they reject? So it's not only what you teach them, but also teaching them telling them how to reject certain things. So
absolutely.
I love your show. I love how you are very objective. I love how you're able to, you're a good conservative.
Thank you,
you're
Jamal.
not like. I'm serious. You're able to take critique well. You're able to say when it's wrong, when conservatives are wrong, when they're right, and how to best combat a particular situation.
Thank you.
It's not just about putting on another side, but hearing another side and being able to argue with that. That takes intelligence, and confidence, and not many people have that. So it's just all hot air. You know what I'm saying? People get too hot too quick.
Yeah.
So, hearing the other side out is important. If you want to grow, if you want to understand, if you want to overcome certain things, you have to know what the other side is thinking. So you can mount a particular attack or how to overcome an issue that you see.
Well, thank you, Jamal. I appreciate the call and I appreciate you engaging. I mean, just really, really thank you. I want to get to I want to get to your point, and frankly, I didn't pay Jamal. Just so you guys know, I did not pay Jamal.
Was he a plant?
To create the intro to this segment?
Seriously.
Because he might as well have. Like, he's right. The first thing that, and it was funny, is that Cam laughed at me when Jamal was like, "Do you have a program?" Cam, what do we call what we do at the Smith household? What's it called? We just talked about it. Nick Saban has it. The program.
Nice.
So Cam, I'm really excited. This is the son I now see eye to eye with. And I don't mean like philosophically. I mean that he's big enough that he can look me straight in the eyes. Help our listeners and help the folks out there understand, what are you up against? What's it like being a teenager in 2023, heading into 2024? Like, tell me a little bit about that.
It's just a lot of struggles with technology mainly, and like struggles with like pornography and stuff like that.
Yeah, tell me about that. Like, that's pretty bold for a teenager to right out of the gates be like, hey, porn's a thing. But you say screens. What do you mean about that? Like, I know in school it's heavy screen based. Like, tell folks what that's like.
It's just like you're on screens. They teach through screens. You're on your computer, and whenever you have free time, you're on your phone. Just like screens the whole entire day.
And is that just some kids, or is that everybody? Like, what's it like?
It's everybody who has the ability to use a screen whenever they can.
And why do you think, do you have any ideas as to why they want to be there as opposed to hanging out with each other?
Because they think it's more fun or more entertaining to just scroll endlessly.
Do you?
Sometimes.
That's an honest answer. I appreciate that. What's the thing with pornography? I mean, you've talked about it. I've talked about it. We talked about it yesterday on the air. It's everywhere, right? Why is that something that is on your mind, other than the fact you're a teenage boy? Like, why is it something that you're mindful of and that you try to not engage?
Because there are very bad side effects of it. Like, it's just a big lie that a lot of people believe, and like it's just really not good for you.
And do you think it helps you in any, like, do you think that it is the kind of thing that will give you useful information about how to engage women?
No.
What could it do in terms of your treatment of women?
Damage your relationship with them.
And it's because it's based and it's predicated on a lie. Tell me about, so we've talked about school, and I'm telling y'all folks, screens are everywhere. When he says that his school day is heavily screen-based, that's where all the materials are. Like, we had books. We had lots of books.
Even I had books.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long ago. I had all books.
Right. Now, school is almost exclusively digital.
Yep.
And so if that's a way that you can learn, that's great. If it's not, that's a challenge. Cam, you mentioned in the car that you had trouble finding stuff. Like, explain what you mean by that.
Like, instead of being able to just pull up your stuff on like paper and stuff and like a syllabus, you have to like go through all these tabs and stuff and all these online folders. And it's just hard to find what you need to find.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I know that, some of y'all actually know this on air. I've talked about Cam got a concussion in football. It was actually really rough. He's still sort of dealing with some of the effects of that. But that environment, he goes to Nolensville High School, and that environment with the coaches and players there has been really important to you. Tell me a little bit about your coaches and that environment. Like, what do you enjoy about that? What are some of the challenges, being on the football team?
Some of the challenges are that, like, I'm on the smaller side and I need to, like, get, like, stronger to be able to play the position that I want to play, but also the coaches are very supportive of whatever I want to do.
Yeah. So one of the things that you said, how did you describe Coach Derek and Coach T? Like, the coaches that you said something about their mannerisms, but also how they felt about the team.
They are like, they really care about their players, but they also are very strong and determined with what their goals are and help you become the best version of yourself.
Do they push you?
Yes, very much.
How does that connect with what we do at home? Smith men, what?
Try hard things or do hard things.
You do hard things.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Because, like, if you don't do hard things, you just become soft and never learn to do the hard things.
And so what would you say, what's the goal? What are we trying to do with the program at the house, the pack we're building? Like, what's the whole point for you?
To raise strong leaders that will eventually lead families.
Yeah. I want young men who are resilient, who honor God with all they say and do, and are prepared to lead in their families and their communities and, frankly, their country. Like, that matters to me, right? And this goes to Jamal's point. If you don't have a game plan for your parenting and why you're doing what you're doing, you don't have a goal. You're just showing up, which, frankly, that's pretty good in that there's a lot of parents who don't show up. Xanax and wine is not a parenting strategy. But the folks that are showing up and are trying, like, I want you guys to know that I see you. This is tough. Parenting is tough. It is a grind. And when I ask you a question most of the time, and ask your brothers a question most of the time, what's the answer? It's four letters, starts with a G.
Good.
And that's the easy one, particularly with boys, is the go away, stop asking me questions. Do you really want me to go away and stop asking questions?
Not really.
Not really. And I think he's being honest there. I think that boys particularly, they pop up a flare to say, good, now will you go away? And if you go away, they won't chase you. Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
But if you do ask the questions, it goes pretty well, right? Like, we have good we have good conversations about what life is like. Have I worked to build trust with you?
Yes, sir.
Do I tell you the truth in some ways that make your mama blush?
Often.
Often. Why do you think I do that?
Like, you want to tell us the direct truth and not just, like, fluff it up for us?
Yeah, I don't filter it. I don't try to because do your friends filter it?
Not at all.
Not at all. And that's tough. Dave's on the line. Let's see what Dave's got. Dave, what's your question or comment?
Well, listening to you and your son, it reminds me very much of my father. And my dad was born literally 2 weeks after D-Day. He was a Navy dentist for 20 years. He was an officer. He was a Vietnam vet. And my dad obviously came from the old school of parenting where, he was involved, but he also gave me just enough rope to hang myself. And if I screwed up, I can remember from the time I was super young, both my mom and my dad telling me, like, if you ever screw up and you get thrown in jail for doing something dumb, don't call us. We're going to leave you to rot, and we're going to come get you when we're ready to get you. And when I was 19, I got a DUI, and I remember calling my dad, and my dad said, you remember what I used to tell you when you were 11 or 12 years old? I said, yes, sir. He's like, good. I'll sleep well tonight because I know exactly where you are.
Woo!
And when he came to get me out of jail, here I am, the midget white kid in the Memphis and Shelby County jail. And when he came to get me out of jail, I looked at the guard, who was probably this 7-foot-tall, 300-pound black lady, and I said, you think you can keep me here? And she said, nope, you got to go home. You could tell she'd seen this before.
Yeah.
And, even at 19, I caught the worst butt whooping I had gotten in 10 years. And, still this, my dad passed from cancer in 2003, but still to this day, my father is my hero.
Awesome, Dave.
And there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about him, that I don't try to make him proud. And you are an exemplary father, and your son is lucky to have you.
Well, thanks, Dave. I really appreciate the call, and I'm sorry for your loss of your father, but sounds like a heck of a man. And most of us are just trying to figure it out. Like, let's be honest. I'll be honest with you right now. We got to take a break. I'm Cameron Smith. You're listening to the Chris Hand Show on Super Talk 99.7.
Freaked out when you asked me the question, so I had to think about it.
What's the program? And we're back. Cameron Smith, you're listening to the Chris Hand Show. I have my 14-year-old son in the Petri dish, studio, and we are asking questions and getting answers because I want you guys to hear from a teenager, because I understand what it's like to ask your own teenagers questions. Good. Or the famous bruh. Bruh.
Bruh.
And we get so much of the bruh. The only times it's problematic is when it's to mom or me. I am not your brother. And Dave made the point about getting left in lockup for a Dewey. That's a question I want to ask Cam. Am I particularly concerned with you liking me?
No, sir.
Why?
Because it's not your goal for us to like you. Your goal is to raise young men who are willing to do what's right in the evil day.
Yeah, that's a pretty good answer. And do I want you to like me?
For sure.
Yeah. So I want my sons to like me. I want them to respect me. What I view is that I've got a job to do whether they feel that way or not. And so if I'm only focused on teaching them and raising them when they like me, and then I pout when they don't, I'm not going to be very good at my job. Because the Bible says that I need to raise Cam and his brothers up in the way that they should go so that when they grow older, they won't depart from that way. That's my charge. That's who I answer to. And I think this goes back to have a point. I've got a charge. I have an obligation to raise the young men in my care. Now, is it always, Cam, this is a fair question, is it always sunshine and rainbows?
No, sir.
So, for example, last night there was a challenge in our house based on some abject disobedience. How did that go for the brother in question?
Not very well. It was very loud.
Yeah, it was very direct. It was sort of drill sergeant style. Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
Because I felt that we had a failure to communicate, and it wasn't on my end. And the standards are pretty clear. Do you think that I give you clear standards to know what your behavior needs to be?
There are not many standards, but they are very high and clear.
Right. That's the whole point. We don't have, would you say we have just millions of rules everywhere?
No, sir.
Right. We in our family, the standard is honor God with what you say and do, even when it's hard. Now, do we always meet that standard?
No, sir.
And neither do I. And so that's something, when I mess up, will I apologize?
Yes, sir.
Do I expect you to do the same thing?
Yes, sir.
And I think that helps, because when I lack clarity, what you said in the car on the way over here, what's the most annoying thing that I do? This is what you said first.
He says half sentences and expects us to do what he didn't tell us to do.
Yes. And it's kind of hilarious that I will do that. And I do this. I'm guilty of this. And he nailed me on it. He said, well, you'll start talking and then you'll stop, but you'll keep talking in your head. And then you expect us to respond to the thing you didn't say. And then you get frustrated when it doesn't happen.
You're like, hey, dude, you never said that.
Why did you do it? And you did not say it. And that's the disadvantage of having 4 boys in the house. They can just be like, no, sir, you did not say that. You started talking and then you got distracted. And I think that's a good example of, and this is kind of a Southern man thing, do I try to present myself as perfect to you?
No, sir.
And so you see when I mess up, and we talk about it, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, what do I expect? Like when you mess up, let's say you pick on one of your brothers, how do I expect you to treat that brother?
Like apologize and like just keep taking care of them.
Make it right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big part of it. How does that work, like at school and with your relationships with your friends? How do you build relationships? Like, how do you have stronger friendships? I know you got some guys at church. Like, how do you make those relationships stronger so they matter?
You just have to like hang out with them, first of all, not over like screens or technology, but like in person and really like get to know them.
Why do you think that matters? Why do you think there's a difference between hanging out with people in real life and spending time with them in person versus doing it in a text group or doing it on screens?
Because you can like really connect in person, and it's hard to connect over like a FaceTime call or something.
You think, is it because you can read their body language, because you can engage? What like, help me understand. I mean, because they seem kind of similar, right? Like, what's the difference? Because I agree with you. I think you're right. Why does physical presence matter? Like being in the room with somebody?
I don't really know how to explain it. It's just like there's something different between a FaceTime call and actually hanging out with that person.
Yeah,
in person.
I think you're right. I think there's a huge difference. And we try to act like they're the same. This is like for the adults, during COVID when everybody was doing Zoom and remote meetings, they're not the same. Grabbing coffee with somebody in person and talking about a work thing, way different than we had a Zoom meeting. Now, there's some utility to those things, and I get that. But from the relational building context, it is light years different. I want to get into some of the faith and family stuff on the other side of this. I appreciate my son Cam being here to talk with us. You're listening to the Chris Hand Show on Super Talk 99.7. And we're back. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Chris Hand at D Cameron Smith on Twitter, X, whatever we call it these days. My son's with me, and I appreciate the feedback on the Super Talk text line. No, text line, 615-737-9986. Please keep it clean and appropriate. 615-737-9986. It is the text line, not the sex line.
Please keep it that way.
It's getting wild in here. So, Zoom call. I'm in a dress shirt and tie and underwear. Yeah, it's different in person. If you have coffee with people in your underwear, it's very strange. Cam and I have been going back and forth on a number of topics, and I appreciate that y'all are finding some of this useful because it's really useful to me to be able to hear what he's thinking. Talk to me about faith, Cam, just a little bit. That's something that's important in our household. You know, what does your faith mean to you, and how does it impact what you do? I know that's a tough question, but I just want to know. You got it.
Faith impacts what I do because, like, it gives you this sort of conscience that otherwise you wouldn't have.
That's fair.
And so, like,
how does it change your decisions? How does reading God's, you know, we read the Bible as a family. You know, you see different verses and stuff. You engage in church. How does knowing that change the way you interact with your friends and teachers and coaches and folks like that? Does it?
it does. That's a really hard question.
I know. How does it shape your character? I mean, is it just words on the paper that you read? Or does it sort of help you know who you are?
It helps me figure out who I am, but like it's ultimately it saves you like for the rest of eternity. So like it's also something like
fire insurance.
Mm-hmm.
So how prevalent is that with your friends? Do your friends talk about spiritual things most of the time? Do they not? Do they have any thought or inclination about any of that stuff?
Very rarely at school. Like, you almost never hear anyone talking about their faith at school.
Yeah. So, and I think you're right. My question to you listeners out there is, if you're going to tell me about pushing back on a woke culture that's a secular culture that doesn't know truth, doesn't know right from wrong, my son's in school with some of your kids, and we're never hearing about it. We're never hearing about truth. We're never hearing about right and wrong. Kids, by and large, faith is something that their parents drag them into. And so, again, is the issue the left and liberals and secular humanists, or is it maybe that, like, we're not teaching our kids right from wrong and giving them the ability to discuss it and know about it? I mean, I think the answer's pretty obvious. Cam, when we were driving in, I asked you what your favorite verse was. Tell me what that verse was, where you heard it, and why it mattered to you.
The verse is John 13:7. It was, you do not understand now what I'm doing, but someday you will. It just kind of like, whenever something's not clear, I just think of that verse in my mind, like, you may not understand now, but someday you will, and it'll be clear to you.
Where did you hear it from?
It was actually an interview with Jalen Hurts, and I thought it was just like a really cool and very understanding verse to me.
So you had the concussion this year. We've nicknamed you Crash. We had an ER visit last night because we thought he might have broken his arm.
Oh, wow.
He didn't. It was just a severe bruise from falling down the stairs. Yeah. At some point, just knowing the ER people too well is a problem for my family. But Cam, explain how that verse, now you don't understand, but then you'll get it. How does that impact you, and how does that connect with your experience this year?
It's like, because like all this stuff has happened to me, and like I do not really understand why all this is happening, and it's
You can continue. I was just coughing.
I know. I was just thinking, like, it's all this stuff is happening to me. I don't like understand why God, like, why is this happening to me? And like that verse just kind of like spoke to me, like, all this stuff is happening. I don't really understand why it's happening, but someday it'll be clear why.
Man, that's profound, man. I mean, that's a big deal. because we live in an instant gratification culture where if things aren't working out at the moment, you were starting on the freshman football team, it was rocking and rolling, you get a fluke concussion in a bad way, and then you can't play. You miss the rest of the season. And, it's easy to feel sorry for yourself and be like, well, God hates me or this or that. But you're looking at it a little different. And I think that really matters. Talk to me a little bit about technology and the phone. What's the most annoying thing that I do in relation to your iPhone?
Screen time limits.
Yeah. We limit that, but do you have a right to privacy with your iPhone?
Not as long as I'm in his house.
Yeah. Not as long as you're at my house. Why? Why is it that I look at your phone?
Because you're trying to help me and help me
Yeah, I'm trying to help you. But what is it that I'm concerned about?
The temptations of the devil and
Yeah, what do I see on your phone? When I look at your phone and I look at your messages and stuff like that, do I see a lot of garbage and horrible things?
Not that I know of.
No, I don't. I'm proud of that. I'm excited about that. What there was one specific instance, we're doing it, that I was looking at your phone and a young lady, you were chatting back and forth with a young lady, and I had to give your phone back immediately. Why was that, Cam? Come on.
She had called me something.
What did she call you? Come on, you can do it.
Come on, now I have to know, Cam.
Come on, you got to tell him. You got to tell him. It was great.
Pookie.
Yes, we were at
sweet.
We are at the stage in life where a young lady was referring to my oldest son as Pookie.
Pookie.
And so, and this is important. It's illustrative of a bigger point. Do I try to embarrass you? Do I text your friends and do things? Do I mess with you in that way?
No, sir. You do not embarrass me in that sense of texting my friends embarrassing things.
Did I mess with you for Pookie?
All the time.
All the time.
And I mean, yeah, justifiably so.
Right. I mean, but in all fairness, I'm very proud with the way Cam engages. And while that was a funny instance, I do think this is really important.
Yeah.
I do think it's important for parents. I understand. You're not sure about privacy. You're like, well, I want to give them their space. I want to let them grow. Sure. But when I see something on your phone, good or bad, what do we usually do about it?
Talk about it.
Yeah. Now, do I yell at you and say, what in the world? Ah! Do any of that stuff?
No, you're usually very calm about it and very direct and just talk about it with me.
Yeah. And I want to know. And when I see something, do I just jump in and, call your friends and be like, what are you doing? Or how do I handle that with you?
Pull me aside, in a private room and just talk to me about it. We just talk for a while.
And I usually give you a choice. Well, would you like to handle it or do you want me to help you out? And sometimes the answer is you want to handle it. Do I then override you and deal with it anyway?
No, sir. You respect me.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I've learned is even though it's not my job to be liked, mutual respect goes a long way. Would you say that's fair, Cam?
Yes, sir.
And so as he's growing and he wants more autonomy and to do things, you make good choices, you get more what?
Freedom.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yeah. Cam, and this is what I teach all of my boys. It's kind of a weird thing. What is liberty?
Freedom and responsibility.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit of a wrinkle. Freedom is I can do what I want. Responsibility, when you add that in, that's what liberty is. Because you have this balance. It's, I am free to do as I want, but I understand my responsibilities and I've balanced these things.
Yeah.
And that's what I want them to understand. At any time at our family, Now, Cam, it's kind of funny, but if you feel like you can lead and you are ready to make the choices as a leader and set out on your own, what have I said about that?
We can leave and not come back.
Yes. Now, does that mean that I won't love you?
No, sir.
But it's a one-way track out of the Smith household, right?
Yes, sir.
And what I try to explain to them is if you feel like you can make decisions such that you don't have to comply with the program and learn anymore, then I fully support you going and trying it on your own. Is that a pretty regular conversation?
All the time.
Yeah. And I let them know because, look, if you have boys in your house, and frankly, if you have girls too, there will be challenges, a lot of them. And a prime challenge for any young man is I know better. Is, man, you're an old fogey. You don't know what you're doing. You don't even understand how to use Twitter. True. But
oh yeah, I knew everything.
Right.
I knew everything.
Right. And so my approach to this is, hey, you think that, you want to be sexually active in my family? Like, we teach that we're shooting for husband and wife here in the context of a marriage. Like, that's the thing. You want to do that? Are you ready to change those diapers? Are you ready to deal with the screams and lack of sleep? Are you ready to do that? And if you are, okay, then let's talk. Are you ready to pay the mortgage that no one can afford?
Yeah.
Are you ready to support your children and teach them in the way they should go? And if the answer is yes, go ahead. Cam, how many of you at this point have raised your hand and said, we know better?
One.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I had a son that joined us for about a year.
Okay.
And then that was always the deal. Is if you know better, you can do better, then I'm not going to stop you. And he said, I got it. I'm going. Does he got it?
No, sir.
Yeah. And it's tough.
Dang, that is tough.
But this is the important thing. Padded room parenting doesn't work. Trying to basically insulate your children from the consequences of their choices and then put them in a world where they're not insulated from the consequences of their choices is malpractice. And the goal is to create, and I've told Cam this all along, the goal is to create consequences over time that mirror reality, right? So when you're a little kid, Cam, like little consequences, right? Now,
yes, sir.
Now that you're older, like what are some of the examples of consequences for you?
The most annoying one is taking away my phone.
You betcha. I know where it hurts.
Yeah, that's tough.
What are your, other than that, what are some of the things that we do to help create consequences for dumb decisions?
Anything pretty much screens.
Yeah, screens, but also chores. That's the other one I was looking for. I mean, you got base level chores you got to do anyway, but we come up with creative ones. And the latest thing that I've invented now is calming task.
Very creative.
Yes. Yes.
Calming task.
Calming task. That if you're going to lose your temper and you're going to act like an idiot, then we're going to have calming tasks.
Oof.
One of my sons had the calming task of, I have this plant inside the house and the leaves collect dust. And he had to individually wipe the dust off each leaf of that plant, and it is not a small plant.
That's very calming.
And so we have calming exercises that I mean, it's kind of silly, but it's the idea of like, you're going to act foolish, you're going to get foolish consequences. It's, well, we're going to go take the grass and we're going to give you a pair of scissors. And we're going to level out this area.
Oof. Yeah.
Because it is not to hurt them or make them matter. It is, one, just focusing on repeated tasks actually does calm you down. But two, to understand the futility. So the futility of cutting zoysia grass in the winter with a pair of scissors in a very large yard is just not real efficient, right? Well, losing your mind and acting like an idiot, not real efficient.
Not going to work.
Same. And so creating those connection points, and I think these guys get it. I think Cam gets it. Are you getting with the program? You feel like the program's moving you in a good direction?
Yes, sir.
Is there any modifications you want to make to the program?
No, sir.
All right.
It's a 5-star recruit right there.
5-star recruit, man. Hey, and I want to tell y'all that I love my son, and he's doing a great job, and I appreciate him coming and talking to us. We'll talk to him for a few minutes on the other side of this break and wrap it up. Thank y'all for listening. This is the Chris Hand Show, and I'm Cameron Smith. You're listening to Super Talk 99.7. I think the reason this bumper is concerning for me is because it sounds like my house.
Just things breaking, chaos.
Just breaking. Dun, 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 dun. And also because I'm old, and the thing that we would watch that I wasn't supposed to watch was Beavis and Butthead.
Oh, okay.
And it would be like, breaking the law. And it was weird. I'm weird. It's because of this. So a couple thoughts from the Super Talk text line that I want to read because I think they're awesome. Jason said, I'm 47 years old and have a buddy just a year or two older than I am, and we still to this day call him Pookie from a girl calling him that in junior high. Sorry, Cam. That's
I love it.
That's going to be frustrating. I also want you guys to know that I talked to Cam ahead of time about the Pookie story, and told him that would be relatable and that he should tell it. So I did not just spring that on him.
Yeah, out of nowhere. Okay,
out of
good.
nowhere.
That's
I am a jerk in many respects, but on that one, I get it. I didn't want to super embarrass him, so I talked to him about it ahead of time. So there you go.
And if any of your buddies make fun of you for that, deep down they want to be called Pookie too.
They do.
So
and you know it was even better?
What?
He won't say this, but the girl who called him Pookie was the girl that all the other boys liked.
Oh, that makes it way better.
So it was indeed
way
better. The Pookie is a badge of honor. Another thing that, or a comment that y'all made that I want to read, I think it's important. It's super encouraging to see another father out there trying to lead in a godly way. Sometimes I feel like I'm only one. You've encouraged me to keep doing what I'm doing and showed me I'm not alone. That's the whole point of these conversations. It is weird. This whole thing's weird. I mean, I have a great dad who I patterned after, and my sons patterned after me. And they're going to pattern after the good or the bad. That's just going to happen. And so, I ask God every day for the grace to parent well and to honor God with the way that I do it. And so you're not alone. Like, you guys can do this. And I understand we've got different family statuses on this radio station and stuff from the host. Family's something that is important to me that I can speak to and want to engage. And so periodically when I'm filling in and stuff, that's why we talk about some of these things, is because I think it's really, really important. Another comment from 8212, boys becoming men that have a propensity for aggression have to learn discipline and putting big feelings where they go unless they're needed. So, Cam, one of the things that we talk about in our family, it's actually from C.S. Lewis, Chronicles of Narnia. We don't want to be safe men, but we want to be
good men.
Yeah. And so this is something in our culture that, we talk about toxic masculinity and all of these things. If you are a safe man because you're weak and because you do not have capacity for great harm, then you're not actually, you not being that way doesn't say anything about your character. It just says that you can't do anything. You're impotent. Impotent is not a moral quality. So to be a good guy that can't engage and create harm doesn't mean anything. What I think is most important is that you have that under control. You have that capacity for harm under control. That's the reason that I teach my boys. That's the reason I go to the gym. That's the reason I want them to be physically fit, mentally fit, spiritually fit, is because I want them to have clear goals and I want them to be able to lead well. And, we are not Vikings. We don't live in that society, but the capacity there to be harmful is the same capacity you need to be a guardian, to be a protector. It just means that you have a difference and you understand how to be disciplined and how to have restraint. And that's what I'm trying to teach Cam and his brothers is how do we order those emotions? I mean, Cam, I'll ask you this as we kind of close here. I mean, you and your brothers, there's some strong feelings, right? Do I tell you that you can't feel?
No, sir.
Do I tell you that emotions are bad?
No, sir.
But what is the expectation about those emotions? Who gets to drive? Like with you, is it your emotions that control you?
No, sir.
Who controls you?
Me.
Right. And so that ordering of emotions, that helping them keep the lid on, if you get upset and you're out of control, and this happened the other day, that one of your brothers got into it with another brother and you got kind of mad, what did you do then? Once you realized your brother was safe, what did you do? You walked away, remember?
Yes, sir.
Why did you do that?
Because I was very upset with what the other brother had done to my biological brother.
And you wanted to be calm.
Yes, sir.
So you can make good decisions, so you could be in control. Thank you very much for your time today, son. I appreciate it. It's been excellent.
Great job.
Yeah, man. So just be encouraged, all you out there in TV land, radio land. You can do it. Hang in there. You're listening to The Chris Hand Show. I'm Cameron Smith, and this is Super Talk 99.7.
From ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. The Trump campaign vowing to fight the 14th Amendment decision by Maine's Secretary of State barring Trump's name off the ballot of the presidency due to his role in the January 6th insurrection. ABC's Stephen Portnoy has more.
Maine's Secretary of State won't have the final word. The law in Maine allows for an appeal of her decision in the courts. And the U.S. Supreme Court has been asked by Colorado Republicans to overturn the ruling in that state, where in a 4-3 decision, Colorado justices deemed Trump ineligible. The nation's highest court has yet to signal its intent to take the case, but experts say it will soon have to answer questions that have never been asked about the scope and application of a constitutional amendment ratified in 1868.
Israel's battle against Hamas is intensifying in Gaza, but Israeli forces are also dealing with drone attacks from Iranian-backed militia groups to the north. The IDF says it's intercepted a drone launched from southern Lebanon. ABC's Britt Clennett is in Tel Aviv.
A member of Israel's War Council warning this week that if the Lebanese government does not take action to secure the border against Hezbollah, the IDF will.
We're not interested in that escalation, but we don't and we can't be expected to roll over.
Israel already expanding its operations in southern Gaza. A strike in Rafah today killing at least 20.
The Israel-Hamas war has heightened security here in the U.S., including extra precautions in place for the famed New Year's Eve celebrations in Times Square. ABC's Aaron Katursky had a tour recently and has details.
Thousands of New York City police officers are getting ready to deploy for New Year's Eve. While there are no specific threats, the celebration comes during what the FBI and NYPD call a heightened threat environment caused by the war between Israel and Hamas. This year, the police are widening the security perimeter. The elaborate security plan also includes dogs, drones, and spectator checkpoints.
Last-minute preparations underway today for the confetti and the ball drop. You're listening to ABC News.
We are rocking and rolling It is the final countdown to New Year's. I'm Cameron Smith. Thank you for joining me on the Chris Hand Show. A couple things that I'd like to discuss based on the Super Talk text line, 615-737-9986. That's 615-737-9986. I realized some of you got excited when I said it was the Super Talk sex line. Thank you for keeping it clean.
Oh, my.
I very much appreciate that. It's kind of weird sometimes, some of the things you guys text. Like, I can see all of it, so let's keep it safe for work.
Tamper that down, please.
Appreciate it. One of the things that I wanted to directly address is I had asked my son Cam to join us on the air because of his perspective, and I think he has a lot to offer. Now, some of you heard Hayden, his much younger brother, who's 9, and because it's a different cohort, 9 versus 14, it matters. It's a very big difference.
Big, yeah.
Hayden is our social chair. Hayden is very comfortable expounding on all answers all the time. He could literally host the show.
Yes.
That's how Hayden works.
He was in here learning the board, talking up a storm to me. Yeah.
That's his personality. In fact, he's like, Dad, if the NFL doesn't work out, I think I might like talk radio. So he's a little bit different. And I want to really applaud Cam for joining, because Cam's my strong, quiet, silent type. Like, that's more of his personality, more reserved. So speaking to a lot of people at once in a public way is not something that he's particularly comfortable with. In keeping with Smith men do hard things, this is difficult for him. It's something that he was nervous about. He was thinking about coming in Thursday. He was like, give me another day.
Yeah.
And
out of a comfort zone.
And it's out of his comfort zone. So some of you made the point of, well, you're asking him questions and he's giving you yes, sirs or no, sirs. That's partially because, and I asked him during the break, would you like to expound a little bit more? Do you want to do this? And he just basically said, I'm comfortable with this. And so I wanted to be clear that this is not a limitation that I'm putting on him as far as don't give us the shades of gray. Don't expound on the questions. This is a matter of, hey, my son's doing something that is difficult for him, that he's trying something that's challenging, and so waxing poetic about things that are maybe a little easier for his brother to do is something that's more challenging for him. And I think it's important that we know our kids well enough to know the difference. And so I wanted to address that so you didn't think that I was sitting here saying, Cam, tell me the answers that I want about the things and shut up otherwise. That was not the case.
Well, and to not shrink down that this is a big feat. I mean, this is something that would be terrifying or scary to a lot of people. And so I imagine that, at 14, that's no smaller. So way to go, man. Seriously.
And I'm 42, and y'all, thank you. I feel like some of you are my grammar teachers who are regularly, Cameron, you said like too many times. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Understood.
You should sit here under the lights and have to think out loud while people are talking at you, and you have to say insightful things. That said, that's part of how we grow and how we learn. And it's no different from me than it is for my son. And I'm very, very proud of him for that. So I want to let you guys know. And I also wanted to just point out how encouraged I am from you guys, and seeing on the Super Talk text line your feedback of like, yeah, man, parenting stuff. Like in this day and age, we say day and age a lot. I just say the evil day. You're standing, you're teaching, and a lot of times you don't get the feedback loop. It's a coach or somebody else that hears the good stuff. You get, bruh. You get, why are you the way you are?
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to know that that I value so deeply your investments in your engagements, not just in your kids, but in other kids. Jamie Morrell is a head coach for Nolensville Wrestling Club. Big old mountain of a man. Jamie has other things to do. He's an attorney by trade, but he's invested in my kids. Jamie is very firm, very direct, expects a lot out of them, makes them better. And
it's huge.
I see the different kids, and I don't mind naming names because these are the men who's chosen, I'm going to engage these kids. I'm going to do this stuff. Carl Klug, another guy, former Titans player.
Yeah.
Coaches the young kids in wrestling. And he'll talk to Hayden, who was in here And Hayden, because Carl was a former Titans player, was like, man, this guy's legend.
Yeah.
So when he's encouraging and lifts up my son, man, it's like steroids. Like that kid's ready to run through a wall and do the hard things. And so it takes a lot of us to do this. It takes a lot of people being encouraging and lifting up one another and lifting up the kids and doing it when some of us fall, right? When some of us are having a rough run. When you lose a job and you're panicked, you're trying to figure out how to provide for your family, or, you know, some folks go through a divorce or whatever. There's a lot of things that impact us in life. And when we are better together, when in person, we shoulder the load. And it does, I mean, I don't know where the village is, but it does take a village. I mean, the reason I love Nolensville so much is because in my community, I have people that take care of my kids, and even the new brothers and other folks that come into our door, that they care that much. Like, it matters to them. It's not just how do I protect mine, it's how do we build our community and how do we take care of each other. So don't lose sight of that, folks. And don't lose hope. I think that's one of the toughest things in parenting is you don't see the immediate results of your investment. And it costs a lot. And you get tired and you're worn down and you're looking at your spouse and you're sitting there in bed like, we got this, right? We got it. We got it. My wife and I tell each other that all the time. We got this, right? And some days we don't. But man, it matters. And so I really appreciate you guys. I appreciate the encouragement back this way. And for those of you guys that are struggling and those of you who don't kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel, keep on. Keep the course. I want to turn now back to some of the different issues that we've discussed. And there's one issue that I just want to make you guys aware of, that when I was filling in for Matt, I had written a column on the Tennessean and talked about, with one of my newest additions, ran afoul of the juvenile justice system. Most people don't want to talk about juvenile justice issues because they're ashamed of it. They're afraid that there will be retaliation if they don't. One of the things that I found was incredibly weird is that, you know, my son, and I don't, again, there's pending things, so I'm not going to talk about some of the specifics. There was one policy issue that kind of stood out to me that was separate from the underlying issue. He was picked up, taken to Williamson County Juvenile Justice Center, and then my wife and I were told, basically, you may not speak to him for 24 hours. That's our policy. And that was a head scratcher for me as an attorney. I'm like, well, I don't understand. And they were like, well, an appointed attorney or these people, clergy is on their policy, can have access, but you can't. And I said, okay. I asked for information on the following hearing day and was sort of patronized about it. But I looked at it and I pulled up the policy and I wrote a column about it and essentially noted, wait a minute, this can't be right. We at the most vulnerable time for a kid, you're telling me that they're cut off from parents, from people who can give them counsel. Oh, and by the way, they can waive their rights. So what they say can be used against them in a legal proceeding. It didn't seem right to me. So I talked about it on the air. And one of the things that came from that is State Senator Jack Johnson reached out and said, hey, I hadn't heard about this. And he started digging in, made some phone calls, called the juvenile justice judge, who hopefully she and I will have an opportunity to talk off the air and probably off the record. But I love it that you guys, in asking questions and saying, hey, what's this policy about? What's going on? Have already prompted changes in movement. And frankly, I give a lot of credit to Jack Johnson for being responsive to you guys, to the issues, and being willing to investigate and check it out. One of the producers here, Bel K, who you guys know, pointed out, that seems a little weird to allow juveniles to waive their rights. That just on their own accord. I mean, that's something we should talk about too, right? And I just want you guys to know that this is not just talk. This is talk radio, but we're looking at policies, we're looking at ideas, and we're trying to figure out how can we move policy in a better direction. And we do that with you. And so when you see something, say something. Talk to the hosts on this radio station. You can reach out to me, again, at D. Cameron Smith. I'm constantly looking for things to write about and talk about. And this was one of them. And we got traction. And then we got a legislative session coming up. And I'm going to ask Senator Johnson, okay, what's the right play here? How are the rules consistent so that everybody has the same expectation? How are we protecting kids? How do we treat the juvenile system different than the adult system? Are we consistent across the board or are we not? And is there policies that the state needs to enact to protect kids and give them an opportunity to, one, experience consequences for their actions, but to do so in a manner that's consistent with civil liberties? Because I do not believe in removing consequences for children. You've heard from my son for the last hour. I believe that there should be real consequences for your actions so that we move in a better direction. That said, I don't like the idea of parents being cut off from kids when they do run afoul of the criminal justice system as juveniles, because that's a vulnerable time. And that's where you need to have access. And there's no public safety concern. If a kid's in a detention center, they can't very well harm the public. And so having access to a parent that can say, hey, you messed up. We haven't forgotten about you. Shut your mouth, and then we'll move forward. That's how this needs to happen. So I'm going to pursue it. I'm going to run it down. Appreciate you guys. Wanted to give you the update there. You can read it over at the Tennessean. You can just search for my name, juvenile justice, and kind of see what's going on there. I pull the policies. I did a sunshine request to get the information, and it's out there for your consumption, for you to consider, particularly if you're a parent in Williamson County. You might want to know about that. I would not take any of that very lightly. If you've got any questions about that, like I said, reach out. We'll talk about some more. I want to hit two other stories before we run away. First, Lauren Boebert is the gift that keeps on giving. The fearless fighter has now decided that she will run to represent her state's 4th congressional district as opposed to the 3rd congressional district where she actually lives. Now, you guys by now know this, that you don't have to run in the district where you live. You can actually run in the district, any district you want. It's just sort of weird to have somebody who doesn't live and experience your daily life representing you. What I want to point out is this sort of hot take social media leadership thing is failing. Boebert is basically running away from a district. She won by 500 and something votes the last go round, and then she had the weird scenario where she was vaping and getting all hot and bothered in a school play. You all saw that. We talked about that. But then she's running away. She's like, I don't want to face the Democratic challenger. Kim Buck's retiring. I'm going to go run for his seat. I think I got a better chance over there. I'm going to run away. Folks, I don't know about you, but I don't think we should support anybody that runs away. They should not be a darling of the Republican Party. If you can't compete. Now, what's ironic is the Cook Political Report immediately changed the race for the 3rd congressional district where Boebert resides and currently represents from toss-up to leans Republican. So Republicans may actually retain that seat now and frankly, she was going to lose. You don't run away from your home district if you're going to win. She knew she was going to lose to the Democrat, and she decided, well, I'm going to go over here. There's a R+7 seat. I'm going to go to this R+13. I think I can win that one. And that tells me you're way more in love with being a politician than you are representing the people in your community. And we should just not have any of it. In the Colorado Republican Party, the chairman came out and was like, ugh, don't think this is a great idea. And I understand it's in Colorado. It's a long way away from Tennessee. But whenever we see that kind of stuff, we shouldn't be like, yeah, they're still cool. We should just be like, no. This is the George Santos stuff. Like that dude, wow. Talk about weird. When we see that stuff, we should be like, yeah, that's weird. And we don't back that. We We want to back folks that represent our communities well, that aren't an embarrassment. And so I know that may be hard for some of you here, big Boebert fans, but she's running away with her tail between her legs because she can't beat the Democrat. Just saying. We got to take a break. I'm Cameron Smith. You're listening to The Chris Hand Show on Super Talk 99.7. Welcome back. We're running out of time, heading to New Year's. It feels like that sometimes, kind of dragging in the mud. New Year's. I hope you guys have some good resolutions. I'd love to hear about them on the Super Talk text line, 615-737-9986. I've also got a report from about 30 minutes ago that Poland said a Russian missile entered its airspace for about 3 minutes before routing back to Ukraine. Don't worry. It's just a local conflict. Don't worry. Everything's fine. Russia's nice, like a teddy bear. Wrong. Not going well. It's not good. So I want to address one of the arguments that was on the Super Talk text line from 8335. I'll just read what they wrote. I'm no fan of Lauren Boebert, but I do not understand how you can chastise her for making a strategic move which will help keep the balance of power towards the Republicans in the House. Of course you want to go where you're more likely to win. Why would you want her to run when she's likely to lose? Once again, no fan of this lady, and I'd definitely like a better candidate, but since she's the one we got, we need to retain these dang seats. Couple things that I want to address with that. I think it's a fair point. Obviously, you need to retain seats. Lauren Boebert was not leaving that seat so that Republicans would have a better shot at retaining it. She was leaving it because she could not retain it, because she did not have a shot to win. The seat that Ken Buck is vacating, again, Ken Buck has not been a weirdo Republican. He's actually been a fly in the ointment on some of this stuff about everything from Biden impeachment to otherwise, because it's an R plus 13. It's not an R plus 28. It's still a relatively competitive seat. If Boebert can't win the plus 7, she's going to represent a community, try to represent a community where she doesn't live, against a field of candidates that have a better shot than she does, because she is a known figure. And so she's not doing anybody any favors. That's the point. I agree. We need to retain these seats. We can do that without her. She should just step aside. That's the right answer, because in Ken Buck's district, the other candidates that are there can certainly win that. It's not, this is what I want to get across. Boebert is not a fighter. She is not the one that's going to win, that she's doing us any favors as Republicans. She's a liability in a competitive arena like Colorado. That's what I'm trying to say. Would Lauren Boebert, if she decided to come to Tennessee and run against Andy Ogles, would she be very competitive? Yep. Because it's a much more Republican district. And so she could do really well there. There's a lot of other places that Lauren Boebert could go and run that she doesn't live or know anything about, because she's focused more on building her own personal brand than she has in actually governing and leading and anything that's not completely weird. And we need to start being honest about this stuff. When there are liability points that hurt the Republican opportunity to govern, we should just call it out, like George Santos being a great example. The folks that are sitting there saying, George Santos got a raw deal. I mean, dude lied about literally everything. Like, if you ask him if he was breathing, he would have probably been like, nope, don't breathe. I mean, and then as soon as he's expelled from Congress, he goes on Cameo? I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And so if that's the Republican brand ambassadors you want, or folks like Santos and Boebert, it's not going to go well for the objectives you have, which is Republicans winning things. If you hadn't noticed, Biden and what's out there are awful. Like, the plan is not there. Democrats are, it's almost like they're trying to lose. It's probably because they see Kamala Harris over there and are like, we just got to flush the whole thing. This is between Biden and her. We got to start over. That feels like what they're doing. And so Republicans cannot be the folks over there saying, hey, hold my beer. We can be worse. Like, we just can't do that. And so when we see this stuff that is not going well, then we absolutely, and I get it with Santos. If you say he should have had his day in court and he should have been allowed to serve out his term, and you say I would not have voted to expel, I'm actually fine with that. I'm actually fine with that. Now, there's a mechanism in Congress where they can vote to expel, and they did. So, again, reasonable minds can differ about that. Reasonable minds cannot differ as to whether George Santos is a weirdo who lied literally about everything. That's fact. That's easy to see. Whether he's criminally liable for stuff is a question for a jury, and I'll concede that. But we need to be consistent. And the weirdness, and let's see. David says, strong conservative Congresswoman, Nancy Mace. Dave, your favorite Hebrew.
Yeah, Dave's
Jewish.
Yep. He's the Hebrew. Yep, he's our fave Hebrew.
I got it. I liked Nancy Mace before she got all performative. Like when she put the scarlet A on her chest.
Oh, this is okay. Yep.
And got all like I am the victim. I am being
I'm
victimized because of my vote and decision. I'm like, grow up. Like, you make a choice, fine, stick with it, fine. But to be like, I am, and incidentally, she didn't really get that the Scarlet A meant adulterer.
Exactly.
Which she's had some personal challenges. I'm like, come on, boss. This isn't about persecution. The Scarlet, do you know where that letter comes? Have you ever heard of Hester Prynne? Maybe not. I don't know. But I liked her for a long time. But the moment that somebody goes all performative on me, they lose me. Because go to Fox News. Go to cable news. Do that instead. Don't lead, because you're clearly not interested in that. I mean, if you would put on a chicken costume, I wouldn't follow you either. I'm Cameron Smith. We need to take a break. You're listening to the Chris Hand Show on Super Talk 99.7. You got to watch those regulators, the bureaucrats. Who knew this song was about the federal bureaucracy? Regulators mount up. No, I've seen what the EPA does when they mount up. It's expensive. Good grief. A couple comments on the Super Talk text line. We got some resolutions here. I like it. 615-737-9986, 615-737-9986. I am resolving to let things go in 2024. Let go of self-doubt. Let go of looking back. Let go of what ifs. Let go of worrying. Let go of caring of what others think of me and my choices. Make 2024 your year of letting go of baggage. Let it go. Let it go. I'm pretty sure that's Frozen.
That's it.
Your New Year's resolution is Frozen. I like it. So there's something to that. I want 2024 to be a year where people have goals. And I want to speak to this briefly. Resolutions are like, well, I want to be more fit. I want to do whatever. That's not actually a goal. A goal is something that is measurable. It's time bound. Like, how long do you have to do the thing? And it has to be achievable. I mean, there's the SMART goal setting framework. Business does this all the time. This is something I do. But I think in your personal life, it's really important. And so y'all do me a favor. Sorry for getting Frozen in your head, folks. It's everywhere.
Yeah, I know. Now I can't stop.
Let it go.
Appreciate it.
Just let it go. We get into these big plans and gimmicks and stuff like that. Just get out a sheet of paper. I know that some of y'all don't have paper anymore, but you should find it. It can be toilet paper. It can be the back of a paper plate. Don't care. Mental, physical, spiritual. Mental, physical, spiritual. Just write down those three categories. And then under it for 2024, figure out what your goals are. And it needs to be specific, measurable, attainable, and time bound. And if you can do that, I think the R is reasonable or something like that. It's because you want to know whether you achieved it or not, right? It has to be something that you could possibly fail. And write it down in those three categories and just say, that's it. Like, I don't need 20. Just give me one in each of them. For you parents out there that were listening to my discussion with my son, Cam, what do you want as a goal for your parenting? What are you trying to do? Like, I support you. I want you to understand that. Read the Bible through in a year. We're finishing up our first round through as a family. We're on the clock. It's been more like the Bible in a year and a half. We didn't achieve the goal in the time frame I wanted to, but we're still going to achieve it. Plenty of options, but just do it. Mental, physical, spiritual, write a goal. And then hold yourself accountable. Tell somebody else about it. Tell your spouse, tell your friends. Say, here's the goal. Here's what I want to do. And then say, did I do it? And if not, why not? What are the things that got in your way? And then set a new goal and then try to achieve it. I know this sounds kind of weird and campy, but we do it in the business context all the time. We should do it in the personal context because the truth is a lot of us just wake up and do day. So what's the thing in front of me? I want to do it, and I guess I'll just keep doing more of it. Somebody said giggle's my goal. Okay, that's interesting. But have goals. And I think a lot of us are afraid to have goals. We're afraid to have standards. We're afraid to have those things because it might not work out. And I think that's the point. And that's what's great. Is failure is not the problem. Never having goals is the problem. We want to talk about the political issues that we talk about all the time on this radio station. If you want to solve those, you got to create standards. You got to say, oh, we keep talking about this border thing. We've been talking about it for 10 years, 20 years. What's the game plan? What is the game plan to figure out a resolution? What's the time limit? Are we going to do it this year? Or are we just going to point out that people are pouring, millions of people are pouring across the border? Are we going to point out the problem, or are we going to say, what's the problem? Or we're going to say, what's the solution? How do we connect with that thing? If we did this same type of standard setting that we do in business, in our personal lives, and our political lives, we'd have much different outcomes. Because we would say, oh, wait a minute, the people that we're liking Well, are they actually good at their jobs? I've been listening to the Andy Ogles ads that have been running on a loop. And Andy's like, well, I'm one of the most productive members of Congress. Based on what? You introduced a lot of bills? I'm not mad at Andy. I think it's fine. But based on what? Show me the standard. Show me why you're good at your job. Tell me the goal. How is your governance solid? How are you representing me well and my family well? Not just did you introduce bills that didn't go anywhere. Did you introduce bills that became law? What were the coalitions you were building? What are the burdens you removed from my family? Those are goals. And did you do them this year? Did you do it over your term? How do I measure that? Or is it just the things that are easy that you can control, like introducing messaging bills, is how you claim that you're good? We should have real standards. Andy wouldn't suggest otherwise. Andy's not saying I don't want accountability and standards. And he's saying the opposite. I've heard his ads. I know what he means. So I think we need to have that on a number of fronts. So again, I'm going to reiterate: mental, physical, spiritual. Write down goals and share them with people. If you don't do that, we've got a bigger problem, because you never want to go anywhere. You don't have a game plan. And I want you to have game plans, because I think you guys are awesome. Some of y'all are sharing your thoughts about Congressman Ogles. Go ahead. Both positive and negative. Knock yourself out. Super Talk text line is open. 615-737-9986. If you message me and want to talk further, I'm happy to. I'm not one of these guys that's super double secret or anything like that. I'll give you my cell phone number and then we can talk. I will say it may be a minute because it's the holidays and I got a bunch of stuff to do, but I want to have these conversations. I want to engage. I don't want to be in a situation where I'm just talking at you, not with you. And because I do columns and other things, I want to carry the conversation across different platforms. It's really, really important. We've got, oh my goodness, the Frozen memes are everywhere. Let's see. Another read the Bible through in a year. I think it's great. Christianity is a lot easier when you read the Bible and do what it says. It's pretty neat. Pretty neat. So the last story I want to hit, while y'all are thinking of your resolutions, sorry, I had to cough, is the DOJ suing Texas over immigration enforcement. You heard me correct. The Department of Justice is suing Texas because Texas enacted a law that basically said they're going to enforce immigration law and deport people back over the border. So I think the challenge here is that it would be super cool if the executive branch did their job and secured the border versus going after states who are saying you've failed your job, so we're going to do it. The Constitution is actually really interesting here. It talks about a system of naturalization, but the regulation of the border is it's more case law than anything else. The Article 1 of the United States Constitution gives Congress the power to establish a uniform rule of naturalization. So, for example, Texas could not grant someone's American citizenship. That would not be permissible under the Constitution. Though the naturalization clause doesn't by itself give the federal government the power over immigration. There's a bunch of cases, the passenger cases, Fong Yu, we can nerd out over all of this stuff, but the bottom line is that these are cases over time that have said that the federal government has the power to regulate and enforce immigration from its foreign policy power, which is in Article 1 and Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution, and it's just a bunch of case law. What Texas is arguing is we have a problem here. We need to address this. The problem here, and why I think DOJ is probably making the claim, is you can't have the law in Texas one way, the law in Arizona one way, the law in... So we already have laws on the books, federal law, that states can essentially help enforce federal immigration law. This is the 287G program, where basically the federal government enters into a memorandum of understanding with the states to take care of this stuff and to help out. And so there's consistency, constitutional authority, and everything like that. The problem is the Biden administration is just basically antagonistic to the rule of law right now when it comes to immigration. And I don't know another way to put it. I try not to be an alarmist, but I can see the numbers. And when you have 2.5 million people, the population larger than most states, being encountered and processed along the southwest land border, that doesn't count all the people that are getting through who aren't caught, who aren't encountered. And it's a huge problem that the Biden administration seems to not be taking seriously. They seem to be saying, it's fine. We've got it under control. It's under control. How dare you question whether this is out of control? We can objectively see it's out of control. It's not a close call. And instead of doing their job well, they've said, well, we need to sue Texas to stop Texas from enforcing the immigration law. Now, guess what? Texas probably is not going to enforce that immigration law if immigration law is being enforced. There's nothing for them to do. But unfortunately, the Biden administration has just had an open door policy. And when I see guys like John Fetterman coming out and saying, what are we doing here, folks? He's not a hardcore conservative. Like Democrats, when you see the mayor of New York saying we can't handle this anymore. When they actually had to do the sanctuary part of sanctuary cities, they decided they didn't like it. The out of sight, out of mind, elitist attitude that immigration issues are non-issues because a lot of blue states aren't on the border is ridiculous. And that's what where we find ourselves on this issue is we've got an executive branch that's not doing the thing it needs to do to protect our border and has decided to go versus partnering with the states under programs and laws that are already in place. They're saying, we're going to sue you instead. We want to stop you from doing the thing that we're not doing. And I understand why that's frustrating. That's not just messaging. That's not a problem in terms of, raising these issues. But that's the way the Biden administration is treating folks who are saying that this is a problem. And for us to figure this out and get it right, we need to be honest about the issue. We need to hold Biden accountable. And I'm telling you, this is going to be a massive election issue. The immigration is not going to be one that goes particularly well for the Biden administration. And we warned them. We told them you should take it seriously. Democrats are telling it to them, and they have decided, nah, we've got it covered. It's fine. You just don't realize it. We got to take our last break. When we come back, Joan Jones and I will discuss what she's going to talk about and if she's bringing in any family. And just maybe a Family Friday. I'm Cameron Smith. You're listening to The Chris Hand Show on SuperDog 99.7. Well, Joan Jones and I are here rocking out on this last segment. I want y'all to keep the resolutions coming on in to the Super Talk text line, 615-737-9986. Let me know what you're resolving to do, what your goals are. Joan, do you have any resolutions?
I really don't.
Okay.
I feel like I've made them so many times, and you get to March, April, and they're out the window.
Yeah. My favorite are the gym resolutions.
Oh, yeah.
Because when I go to the gym, all of a sudden in January, it's just herd ball.
Yeah.
There are so many people in.
Yep.
And I'm like, why are you here? You're not going to be here that long. Now, some of them stick. I give them credit.
Yeah.
But by end of February, it's back to normal.
Yeah.
But January spikes through the roof. You get all these people that are like, this thing with weights on ends and the handle in the middle, what would you call that? It's like they've never even thought about it.
And they really don't know the rules of the road. So
Yes,
I feel
yes.
like there's not a lot of wiping of the sweat. And,
No, it's the dude that's like, you have not been to the gym in a decade.
Yeah. The grunting.
Yes.
I don't like grunting.
You're sweating everywhere. It's like you mopped the bench. That's why there's spray everywhere and there's things to wipe it off with, so it's not gross. And and so tell me about, you're leading into the new year right now. What you got on the deck for the show today?
Well, I have been inspired by what you've been doing this week. So at 2:00, I've got my sons on with me, both of them. They're older than your kids.
How
so they're 28 and 30.
Man, you guys are getting the full range from 9 to 30.
See,
Seriously.
And so what I think is really cool is that I think we probably have raised our children in a similar fashion.
Sure.
So you get to ask them the questions while they're young. And now we're going to see what it's like on the other end of that. Like
The
how
back
how do they end up?
Dang, I'm going to listen to that. That sounds
So,
cool because
yeah.
I want to know that the program has a chance at being successful and it's not just, oh my goodness, this is a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, and it's worth every second of it.
So I'm sure you've seen the blame it on the Maine issue.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, look, these people have laid their cards out like well in advance of doing what they're doing right now. They've laid their cards out. We know where they're coming from. We know this, what's her name? Bellows?
Yeah.
Her.
Yeah, that one.
I mean, she has been out front of the issue. She has been speaking.
Shenna Bellows.
Yeah, she's been speaking, anti-Trump messages for so long. And the notion that I love when the Democrats do this, when they do these things in tandem with each other, it's not organic. It's not that there's, that Shanna Bellows feels, so right about this. But she got the memo that the other people, they're just following in lockstep with one another. And
So speaking of lockstep, I saw Bernie Sanders informing us that he has COVID. And talking about his steps of, social distancing and all that. Do you feel a need to let people know about your respective illnesses, generally speaking?
I do not.
Yeah, so
I do not.
This is one of the weirdest versions of it's sort of virtue signaling, but it's more like disease signaling. That it's like, the correct protocol when I find that I have COVID is to tell everyone I have COVID and to explain the things that I'm doing in relation to the COVID.
Yeah.
And why?
Yeah. When COVID hit, when it first hit, my husband and I tried to spend a lot of time outdoors.
Sure.
Just go take walks. And there was a trail near our home. And so we were always on the trail. And there was a woman coming opposite direction of us. And we're talking and laughing as we're walking. And she walked out into the road to get away from us with her mask on outside and yelled at us, single file. Single file, you two.
Single file.
Yeah.
So I'm not, on all this stuff, COVID was serious. A lot of people did die. We can talk about our response to it and the good and the bad, mostly just bad in the way that we handle the economy. But we are so far removed at this point, and the left in particular is still doing the signaling or whatever. I don't know what it means, but the fact Bernie Sanders has had all the COVID vaccines.
Yep.
I mean, all of them, which is fine. Again, that's a personal choice. You decide what you want to do for your health. Great. But to be like, when I get sick, the first thing, and I get man colds, which are quite severe, very, very deadly. And
so the sniffle and you're dying.
Right.
Gotcha.
I'm dying. My wife's like, I'm pretty sure you're okay.
Yeah.
But the first thing I do is I want to go to bed and drink some fluids and sleep. And Bernie Sanders is much older than me and is like, we must tweet. We have the COVID. We must tell people.
It's probably his people that are tweeting for him.
But again,
yeah,
like if
I get it.
I'm sick, I just find this so weird. The need to explain how you're. It's like on Facebook when people mark themselves safe from different things.
Yes,
like you should just tell me if you're unsafe. Like,
so I feel like AOC maybe led this charge with over informing people about your lives because I mean, how much do we know about her? Like way too much.
Yes.
So, that Bernie's doing it too, unsurprising.
I have to blow my nose. I will tweet about this and let everyone know I have the I don't right now. I'm going to eat lunch and now
I'm sitting on the front porch.
In all fairness, I am guilty because when I see food that's good, I do take a picture of it and sometimes I post it. I'm not going to lie because it's America. Like you take pictures of your food. That's almost as cool as eating it, or so I've been told. Joan Jones is next. I'm Cameron Smith. Thank you for being with me on the Chris Hand Show. You're listening to the great, the wonderful Super Talk 99.7.
From ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. Another ceasefire proposal in the works between Israel and Hamas. ABC's Britt Clinton is in Tel Aviv and has more on the negotiations in the Egypt-brokered deal that would also include the release of more hostages.
Israel's cabinet had been due to meet to discuss a deal with Hamas that would see them exchange hostages for prisoners. But, this has now been cancelled by the country's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu met with families. He said that he doesn't have any details to offer them, but that there is ongoing communication. Now, Egypt says it has not got a reply from either side regarding a three-pronged deal that it has proposed. So publicly, really, there isn't much that they're reporting.
Concerns growing of a widening conflict. U.S. Central Command says the U.S. Navy shot down 10 attack drones and 5 missiles deployed by the Houthis in the southern Red Sea. U.S. officials say there was no damage to ships or injuries. President Biden condemning Russia's latest series of airstrikes across Ukraine targeting civilians. The president renewed calls to pass the additional Ukraine aid package stalled in Congress. ABC's Marcus Moore has details.
Russia launching more than 150 rockets and drones in this attack that went on for some 10 hours. Ukraine's Air Force said that it is the largest attack on the country since the start of the full-scale invasion. And this, of course, comes as the U.S. has just announced a $250 million aid package for Ukraine. But 2024 promises to be another difficult year as Ukraine pleads for more support from the West.
Maine's Democratic Secretary of State ruling Donald Trump is ineligible to run on Maine's primary ballot for president, citing that the former president's role in the January 6th insurrection. ABC's Aaron Katursky has more.
The Trump campaign says it will file an immediate legal challenge. We don't know